Hey, what's up, nostalgia fans? Welcome back. Does anybody else remember when Nickelodeon looked at one of the darkest and most emotionally brutal book series ever that was marketed to children and then thought, yeah, we can totally turn this into a family-friendly primetime show? And whether you remember it that way or don't remember it at all, I want to welcome you to the story of Animorphs, a TV show so doomed from the start that even the creators have bluntly spoken up about how hard it was to adapt. This is the story of how Nickelodeon, Scholastic, and an old decommissioned power plant in Toronto tried to bring morphing teenagers to your TV screen, but really just dropped the ball in spectacular fashion. A brilliant book series that never belonged on Nickelodeon. To understand why the TV show failed, you gotta understand what Animorphs actually was in the source material. K.A. Applegate's series, which launched in 1996, was not your typical kids' adventure. Sure, it was marketed at kids, and it did have all the right hooks to get kids' attention. You don't need much more than kids who turn into animals to fight aliens. However, beneath that premise was a genuinely dark war story with heavy topics, to include PTSD, moral compromise, and the destruction of childhood innocence itself. The Animorphs book series sold over 35 million copies. Those iconic covers showing kids mid-morph were instantly recognizable, with flipbook animations in the page corners. But the content inside those books was brutal. Characters got dismembered, trapped as animals forever, infested by brain-controlling slugs while screaming inside their own heads. These books were tackling war crimes, genocide, and whether child soldiers were justified or not. Animorphs was honestly like Lord of the Flies meets Invasion of the Body Snatchers, but for middle schoolers. The series ran 54 books between 1996 and 2001, releasing about 11 books per year. And when the book series did end, it didn't give readers happy closure. The final books gut-punched its readers, with a beloved character dying brutally and survivors left shattered and traumatized. So naturally, some genius at Nickelodeon thought this would make for great family-friendly television. From day one, K.A. Applegate and Michael Grant knew that the live action for Animorphs was doomed. Grant later joked that the show combined the three most expensive things in television: child actors, animals, and special effects. The authors even pitched a better solution for the show. Why not animate it? The authors were all fans of Batman the Animated Series, and they suggested we should do something like that. Animated Animorphs could be dark and stylized without wrangling tigers. And Scholastic ignored them. The decision was already made. Live action, Nickelodeon, filmed in Toronto with Protocol Entertainment. The authors, already having warned everyone, could only watch as their creation got mangled by good intentions and bad budgets. Making the impossible. Casting, locations, and chaos. The search for children actors actually yielded an impressive cast for the show. Shawn Ashmore as Jake, years before X-Men's Iceman. Brooke Nevin as Rachel. Nadia Le Nascimento as Cassie. Christopher Ralph as Tobias, Boris Cabrera as Marco, and Paul Costanzo as Axe. They were all enthusiastic, talented, and committed to the bit, which makes what happened next relatively tragic. The production conditions were simply bananas. The primary studio was an old power plant that crew members would later describe as barely suitable for a television production. Sets were all built in rough spaces with hazards everywhere. It was a little bit like the Wild West in terms of safety. And yet somehow none of this actually showed on screen. The show managed to look like actual television, bouncing from alien pools to warehouses to forest, all cobbled together with plywood and prayers. Was it stupid? Yeah, it was stupid, but it was actually kind of impressive as well. Turning kids into animals on a 90s TV budget was exactly as hard as it sounds. CGI was not only primitive back then, but it was expensive too. Remember, this is decades before any Joe Schmo with a PC could download Blender and start making 3D models with nearly no prior education or experience. The morphing sequences in the Animorphs show were brief dissolves of warping skin effects that aged terribly. The alien visuals suffered catastrophically as well. Yeerks were simple slug props. And unfortunately, the Andalites were probably the crown jewel of failure. That ridiculous blue shag carpet thing with stiff tails and barely moving animatronic eyes. Prop master Alan Doucette defended it once before, with the quote, "For a kid's show in the 1990s, I think it actually looked pretty good." And he's actually right. For a shoestring budget, it was indeed adequate. The problem was Animorphs wasn't supposed to be adequate. It was supposed to be mind-blowing. Animorphs was a story that was far beyond 1998 children's television, and it showed. Because the show insisted on live action, that meant it required dogs, cats, birds, horses, reptiles, insects, and occasionally even some large predators. In hindsight, the setup was clearly a huge risk. Working with live animals around child actors, under tight schedules and limited resources, created situations that would never be approved today. Directors and crew have since joked that certain choices, especially the ones involving big cats, would get a production shut down instantly in the modern era. The fact that no one was seriously injured is less a sign of good planning and more a reminder of how much looser television safety culture was in the 1990s. When budget and network standards collide with the source material. So here is what most people would argue is the fundamental problem with the Animorphs TV show. The books were genuinely, unrelentingly dark. Characters got injured, made impossibly difficult choices, and sometimes died in ways that even scarred its young readers. The TV show, on the other hand, pulled every punch possible. Under Nickelodeon's mandate, violence was softened severely, and all disturbing elements were removed. The visceral morphing descriptions from the book, bones shattering, skin warping, just became quick camera cuts. Even the clothing issue got sanitized. In the Animorphs book, morphing actually, like shredded your clothes, leaving the kids naked. TV magic, of course, had clothes magically reappear. The TV show made some significant changes that frustrated its fans. Alien species mostly just disappeared. Taxons were too difficult to visualize, so they're barely mentioned at all. Cosmic entities like Krayak were greatly diminished as well. Visser 3 became campy instead of terrifying. Small details also shifted illogically. Rachel's morphs were reduced and inconsistently reassigned. Plot points swapped between characters with no logic behind the decisions whatsoever. When the books introduced the character Axe, they featured an epic underwater rescue scene. The TV show, on the other hand, just had Axe conveniently crash near town. Kids escaped as butterflies instead of sharks because filming underwater was simply too complicated. These weren't all just budget-saving changes. They demonstrated that the creators didn't understand the source material or were handcuffed by Nickelodeon's restrictions. A short, uneven run and a fan base that felt betrayed. The Animorphs TV show debuted in September of 1998 and it ran for 2 seasons, totaling just 26 episodes. With that limited run, the series barely scratched the surface of a saga that spanned 54 books in the original series. The show adapted roughly the first 6 to 12 books in a loose, rearranged fashion, then wrapped it all up with a makeshift ending that left essentially everything unresolved. Key plot lines were never explored one bit. The identity of Visser 1, being one of the major antagonists from the books, just never got revealed. Tobias's tragic struggle with being permanently stuck as a hawk, which is one of the most compelling character arcs in the whole series, was touched on but never fully developed. The introduction of secondary heroes and villains, the expansion of the war beyond their hometown, the moral complexities that define the later books, none of that made it to the screen. The show stopped just as it was getting started, kind of like reading the first chapter of a novel and then having someone tear out all the remaining pages. The 3-part finale was concocted specifically to serve as a quick ending. It showed the team victorious in a small battle, celebrating together at a diner with a dance sequence that was very sweet but also 100% tone deaf to what the series should have been. But the actual war against the Yeerks? Far from over. The broader invasion? Still happening. The moral complexity, the character development, the escalating stakes that made the books all so compelling? All so completely absent in the TV series. Even the cast knew that something was wrong. When Season 2 got a drastically reduced episode order, just 6 episodes compared to Season 1's 20 episodes, it was obvious to everyone involved that the show was dying. By February of 2000, Nickelodeon aired the final 3 episodes as a TV movie event and then quietly canceled the series. The ratings for the Animorphs TV show were never spectacular. The show never achieved Goosebumps-level popularity despite Scholastic and Nickelodeon clearly hoping to capture that same audience. And as years passed on, a certain nostalgic affection grew for the series' cheesy charm. What remains? Failed reboots, lasting potential, and a cautionary legacy. The cast and crew of the Animorphs TV show poured their hearts into that show. Brooke Nevin recalls the wide-eyed wonder of being a 15-year-old and stepping onto those makeshift sets, feeling amazed by everything that went into creating the alien spaces and underground tunnels, even if that magic was happening in a dingy warehouse that probably violated multiple building codes. The production schedule was simply brutal for this show. A normal kids' half-hour show might shoot an episode in a few days, but Animorphs oftentimes took 6 or 7 days due to the complexity of working with animals and effects. Director Ron Oliver recalled the immense challenge of staying on schedule. Trying to get those things done in time was incredibly tough, given that even a simple shot could be delayed by an animal not hitting its mark or an effect needing extra takes. Looking back on it, the team also has mixed feelings about the project. Prop master Alan Doucette once said, "For a kids show in the 1990s, I think it actually looked pretty good," noting that the creepy rubber Andalite face that they built scared the heck out of some young kids, which in a way meant that they'd succeeded at something. The Animorphs TV show may have been a beautiful disaster, but it was their beautiful disaster, and it was indeed beautiful. And for those involved, it represented a unique moment in their careers. A genuinely ambitious attempt to do something different in children's television, even if budget and circumstances conspired to make that ambition mostly impossible. What remains? Failed reboots, lasting potential, and a cautionary legacy. The story of Animorphs adaptations didn't end with the Nickelodeon series. If anything, it kind of started the pattern of disappointment that would just keep repeating itself. In June of 2020, Scholastic Entertainment announced that a live-action Animorphs movie was in development with producer Eric Feig and Picture Start. Fans were optimistic, but very cautiously optimistic. For the first time, modern visual effects might Scholastic should consider letting the rights go to somebody else who truly understands the material, noting that plenty of filmmakers grew up as Animorphs fans and might actually get it. And this has become the pattern. Every few years, random rumors surface about Animorphs. A Netflix series, an animated reboot, a film trilogy. Fans get hopeful. Then the news quietly evaporates. Nothing materializes. The cycle then repeats itself. Which is an honest shame, because the truth is Animorphs is exceptional source material. The Nickelodeon series didn't fail because Animorphs was unadaptable. It failed because it was mishandled from the start. Wrong medium, wrong budget, wrong network for sure, and wrong expectations. The production team faced impossible technical challenges. The network demanded a tone that was hugely, fundamentally incompatible with the books. What emerged was a compromised version that satisfied neither longtime readers nor casual viewers. And yet, the bones are still there. An Animorphs adaptation done right, with the proper budget, real respect for the source material, and a willingness to embrace darkness and moral complexity, could be extraordinary. After all, we're living in an era where audiences have embraced exactly this kind of storytelling. Franchises like The Hunger Games, His Dark Materials, and Invincible have all proven that viewers will follow challenging and emotionally heavy stories if creators don't pull their punches. So we think the question is not whether Animorphs could work or not. The question is whether anyone is actually brave enough to trust it, to let Animorphs be scary, uncomfortable, and uncompromising the way the books always were. However, until that day comes, we at least still have the books. We have those unforgettable cover images. We have a theme song that frankly still rocks and rules. And we have that 1998 Nickelodeon series, a beautiful disaster that proved something important. You can have passion, you can have talent, you can have the best intentions in the world, but still completely miss the point. Alright, nostalgia fans, there you have it. The complete story of the Animorphs TV show, from conception to cancellation to failed reboots. A cautionary tale about ambition and compromise and the dangers of adapting something without understanding what made it special in the first place. Do you have any memories of Animorphs as the TV show or the books? Did you watch this series as a kid? Did it disappoint you as much as it disappointed the other book fans? Let us know in the comments below, because we actually read them all and occasionally even respond like functional adults. If you enjoyed this deep dive into 90s TV failures with us, do us a favor by hitting the like button and subscribing to the channel if you haven't already. And if you really want to help us out, click that bell icon so you don't miss out on our next retrospective on shows that tried really hard but still failed spectacularly. Until next time, everybody, try to remember this. Just because you can adapt something, it doesn't mean that you should adapt it. And maybe, just maybe, the authors know what they're talking about when they warn you that it's a bad idea. This has been Dial-Up Days, reminding you that sometimes the books really are better, and that's perfectly okay.